Hello everyone, it's Miss LaChance back again with another read aloud video where we take a deep dive into The Wild Robot Escapes by Peter Brown. Now, before we get into today's chapters, we'll be reading chapters 16 through 20. I just wanted to give you a brief summary of what happened in the last chapter that we read, chapter 15, called The Children. And if you don't remember, you can go ahead and listen to this summary. And if you just want to go ahead and skip right on to the read aloud on chapter 16, you can go ahead and do that as well. But in chapter 15, the chapter called The Children, we saw Jad and Jaya, Mr. Sharif, the farmer's kids. They were playing a game of hide and seek. And Roz actually got into this game of hide and seek, and she is continuing to think about the strategies that she can use in order to escape from this farm and return back to her home on the island where her son Brightbill is. So without any further ado, let's go ahead and dive into chapter 16. This is a pretty short chapter. It's only one page, and it's called The Robot's Dream. Again, if you would like to comment on any of the questions I'll be asking during this video, you can go ahead and feel free to comment down below. I will be asking you, if you are interested, to give a brief summary of chapters 16 through 20 if you're interested. But anyways, let's go ahead and get started with The Robot's Dream. Cows grazed in the pasture. Wind rustled through the tall grass. Clouds drifted over the fields. Farm machines rumbled and buzzed. Milk flowed into bottles. Bottles were packed into boxes. Boxes were loaded onto the milk truck. The truck drove away full and returned empty. Children romped around with their dog. A man sat at his desk. A robot dreamed of escape. So I'm not sure that this chapter is actually talking about a dream that Roz had in her sleep, because as we all know, Roz doesn't sleep. She's a robot, right? She has a button on the back of her head that is turned on and off to either bring her back to life or to shut her back down. So I'm not thinking that this is a dream that she had in her sleep, since she can't sleep. I think this is just talking about, you know, what she's dreaming of, what she wants to do to escape from this farm environment that she has found herself in. The next chapter is chapter 17, and it's called The Birds. Hilltop Farm was home to many birds. Swallows were always swooping low over the grass and picking off insects. Crows cawed from the fields like a gang of hecklers. At night, owls glided above the countryside, silently searching for furry little meals. The robot was stuck on that farm, but the birds were free to go wherever they pleased. Lucky birds. One day, Roz was standing in the pasture, admiring a hawk as he soared through the sky when the cows began grazing around her. Their slow footsteps crunched in the grass, their teeth chewed and chewed, their tails flicked at flies. All the while, Roz stood there, staring up at the hawk. And then came Lily's soft voice. "What are you thinking about, Roz?" Remember, Lily is the calf on the farm, the baby cow. The robot turned to the calf. "I am thinking about Brightbill," she said. "It was not so long ago that I was watching my son soar through the sky. That seems like another lifetime." "You must hate your new life," said Annabelle. "I can't say that I blame you. Farming looks like such grueling work." "Actually, I like farming," said Roz. "Somehow it feels right to spend long hours working with machines and tools and crops and animals, but I miss my old life on the island." Tess had a mouthful of dandelions, but that didn't stop her from speaking. Maybe you should start thinking of this farm as your home. That island is awfully far away. There's a good chance you'll never make it back there." "Don't say that," cried Lily. "Roz just has to make it home. She needs to be with Brightbill and her friends." "Tess is right," said Roz. "I may never make it home. If I were a bird, like my son, I could fly home all on my own, anytime I wanted. But I'm only a robot." Nobody spoke after that. The cows went back to grazing, and Roz went back to admiring the hawk. Her eyes followed the bird as he soared through the sky, free to go wherever he pleased. So, I'm sure you are probably picking up on the fact that Roz is looking up at this hawk flying in the sky, and she is wishing that she could have wings and fly back to her, what she recognizes as her home on the island. The next chapter is called The Entertaining Robot. This is chapter 18. We will read 3 more chapters in this video, and then the next video I will be posting will be chapters 21 through 25. The children wandered out behind the farm buildings, through a clearing, and over to an old oak tree. It was the same tree their father had climbed when he was a boy. Mr. Sharif's initials were carved into the bark at the bottom of a long list of initials. For generations, all the Sharifs had carved their initials into that tree, going back to the ancestors who first built the farm. Someday, the children would add their initials to the list. Beneath the leafy branches was a scattering of acorns. Jad cleared a spot for himself, sat down, and pulled a small computer from his pocket while Jaya climbed above. I wonder what this small computer in his pocket is. Go ahead and comment below if you have an idea of what this piece of technology is. The siblings spent the afternoon there, lazing around the tree until the robot marched past, carrying the big, heavy toolbox. "What you doing, Roz?" called Jad. The robot stopped. The drone had crash-landed again, she said. "I'm going to fix it again." "Do you need any help?" "I do not need any help." Or sorry, I'm going to go back and try that again in my robot voice. I realized I was not using my robot voice with Roz in that last part when she's talking to the kids, and I'm now realizing that she's probably speaking in her robot voice. The robot stopped. "The drone has crash-landed again," she said. "I am going to fix it again." "Do you need any help?" "I do not need any help." "I'm bored," said Jaya, her legs dangling above her brother's head. "Can you do something fun, Roz?" The robot put down her toolbox and said, "What would you like me to do?" "I don't know," said Jaya, thinking hard. "Can you do a backflip?" "Yes, I can do a backflip." A grin spread across the girl's face. "Roz, I order you to do a backflip." At that, Roz crouched, and then she leaped into the air, flipped backward, and gently landed on her feet. A perfect backflip. Jad put his computer away. Jaya jumped down from her branch. The children were impressed. "What else can you do?" said Jad. "Can you juggle?" "Yes, I can juggle." "I order you to juggle, some of those acorns." Roz walked up to the tree, picked up 3 large acorns from the ground, and began juggling them in a perfect rhythm. Jaya studied the robot's movements and then began tossing acorns into the air as well. The first one went a little too high, the next one a little too far, and soon they all went tumbling back into the grass. "Do you know any jokes?" said Jad. "Why did the chicken cross the road?" "Never mind," Jad scratched his head. "Can you tell us a story?" "What kind of story would you like to hear?" "A robot story," said Jad. "An animal story," said Jaya. "How about a robot and animal story?" said Roz. The children smiled at each other. Then they sat against the tree and looked up at their robotic storyteller. Once upon a time, there was a robot who lived alone on an island. Oh, sorry, Roz is speaking to the children, and she doesn't want the children to think that she can speak in the language of the animals, so I'm going to go back and use my robot voice. Once upon a time, there was a robot who lived alone on an island, Roz began. She spent her time wandering across mountains and forests and meadows, and then something terrible happened. Rocks fell, and the robot tumbled off a cliff. She survived the fall, but sadly, the rocks killed 2 geese and smashed 4 of their eggs. The robot stood there, staring at the poor goose family until she heard a tiny voice peeping from somewhere nearby. She followed the peeping voice and discovered a perfect goose egg sunk in the dirt. The robot carefully picked up the egg and carried it away. And when the gosling hatched from his shell, the first thing he saw was the robot looking back. "Mama, Mama," he peeped. The gosling thought the robot was his mother, and from that day on, she was. The robot adopted the gosling as her son, and together they made a funny little happy family. The end. The children sat there and thought about Roz's strange story. Then they looked up at her and said, "What happened next?" In chapter 19, we have the title, The Storytellers. Roz and the children had a new routine. Several times a week, they'd gather beneath the oak tree, and Roz would tell stories about the robot on the island. The children loved hearing about how the robot survived mudslides and bear attacks and harsh winter weather. They loved hearing about how she befriended the island animals. But the stories they loved the most were about the robot and her son, the goose. He sounded like such a nice goose. Roz told the children story after story after story. What she couldn't tell them, was that the stories were true, and they were about her. The children wanted to get in on the storytelling fun. Jaya told adventure stories about dragons and monsters. Jad told silly stories about aliens in outer space. But as the children grew more comfortable with Roz, they began talking about their own lives. They talked about growing up way out in the country. They talked about their schoolmates and their friends and their family. They talked about how their parents used to work together around the farm and how perfect everything was before the accident. In an instant, their lives were upended. Their mother was gone and their father was injured. Mr. Sharif tried to keep the farm going by himself, but there was so much to do, and he was so weak now. The farm machines powered along, doing their jobs as usual, but they needed to be maintained and monitored. Eventually, the machines started breaking down, and the farm started falling to pieces. The children wondered if life would ever feel normal again. "That's why we got you, Roz," said the girl. "We needed you to save this place." "And that's exactly what you're doing," said the boy with a smile. So as Roz is becoming closer with Jaya and Jad, they're talking about their lives, they're telling stories to one another. What feeling or emotion do you think, Roz is a robot after all, but she is a special robot, and in the last book, she has learned how to express certain emotions. What emotion or feeling do you think Roz could be feeling now that the kids are telling her, "That's why we got you, Roz. Because my father can't do all the work, you need to help us out." What feeling could this make Roz feel if she, in the back of her mind, is still thinking about her escape? Go ahead and comment below if you have an idea. Chapter 20 is called The Wild Animals, and here we have a lovely picture of a snake. Let's dive in. This is the last chapter that we will be reading together today. Wildlife can be very good for farmland. Insects pollinate the plants, snakes eat the pests. The droppings of rodents and birds and every other animal act as a natural fertilizer. Roz wanted more of those helpful creatures on the farm, so she let the unused sections of land go wild. Up from the ground emerged native weeds, flowers, woody brambles, and with the wild plants came wild animals. But then some creatures came sulking around who were not helpful at all. It started when Roz noticed a heavy scent floating on the breeze. She followed the scent out to a narrow strip of forest on the edge of the property. There were clumps of fur in the undergrowth and claw marks in the dirt. There was blood too, lots of it. And then she found the carcass. A deer had recently been killed and eaten. The robot's head slowly spun around as she scanned the area. Not far from the carcass was a pile of droppings. It looked like it might have come from a dog, but Oscar wasn't large enough or ferocious enough to kill a deer. What kind of animal could have done this? Roz had been standing there at the edge of the property for a while. She imagined Mr. Sharif in his office, sitting at his computer, eyeing her location on the map. Any minute now, he would hobble out to his truck and come racing down the driveway to check on her. Roz didn't want to upset the man, so she left the carcass where it was and returned to her work. But from then on, she kept a careful watch for any more signs of trouble. Okay, so if we know anything about prey and predators, or predators of deer, what kind of animal do you think this could have been? If you think it's an animal. If you think it's something else, go ahead and comment below. Make sure that we're making predictions based on what we have read already. So we should be using example or sentence stems like for example or in this part of the book. Okay, so we shouldn't just be predicting based on what we think in our mind, but we should be using that text evidence, okay? The next couple of chapters that I will be posting is chapter 21, 22, 23, 24, and 25. And the next chapter, chapter 21, is called The Howl. Anyways, thank you so much for watching. I can't wait to dive into chapters 21, 22, 23, 24, and 25 in our next video. I hope you're enjoying them so far. Like I said previously, please go ahead and feel free to comment on any of the comprehension questions that I have asked. Or honestly, if you would like to give a summary or a prediction or any of your thoughts, honestly, I'm accepting all comments. So any thoughts about the book so far, I would love to read what you're thinking. Anyways, thank you so much for watching again, and I will see you in the next video. Bye, friends.